Welcome to the panel Lessons Learned from Seed Lenders. My name is Susanna Connor, and I'm a librarian here in Tucson at Pima County Public Library. This panel will discuss seed library outreach and educational needs. The panel will cover the challenges and successes and see how we can best evaluate and measure that success. So the format of the panel will be as follows. I'm going to introduce each of the panelists, and then each panelist will then have a minute or two to speak briefly about their experience and their key message. And I will just say briefly because we do have a lot of panelists. And finally, we'll leave some time for questions and answers from the audience. So first here we have Justine. So is everybody here this morning? So everybody met Justine, a librarian here at the Pima County Public Library. Justine understood early on that the cornerstone of a community-supported collection, such as a seed library, is the communities. So she set out to help facilitate mechanisms for the community to come together to learn, grow, share, and connect. In 2014, she was honored as Library Journal Mover and Shaker for her role as a community builder. And next we have Cindy Connor. Cindy Connor is the author of 2 books, Seed Libraries and Other Means of Keeping Seeds in the Hands of People, and Grow a Sustainable Diet. She's a permaculture educator and founder of Home Place Earth. She is the producer of 2 popular instructional DVDs entitled Develop a Sustainable Vegetable Garden Plan and Cover Crops and Compost Crops in Your Garden. A former market gardener, Cindy was instrumental in establishing a sustainable agriculture program at her local community college, which she taught for over a decade. And then we have Jacob. Jacob Curie Moreland, who is very fond of puns, by the way. I deny all responsibility for this bio. Jacob grew up and grows on a farm north of Toronto, near Orillia, Ontario, and is a recent graduate of the University of Toronto, majoring in sociology and philosophy. Jacob, also known as the People's Gardener, co-initiated the Occupy Gardens movement and has inspired and planted free community food gardens across Toronto, including Queen's Park, Toronto City Hall, and Parliament Hill in Ottawa. He is an experimental seed farmer, permaculturist, musician, and public speaker. He is co-founder of the Toronto Seed Library and a new nonprofit called the Seed Library Commons, which exists to promote seed literacy, or Literaseed, and create a network of free public access seed collections inside public libraries, schools, and other public spaces. Jacob is unabashedly pro-peas and rooted in solidarity, envisioning a world free of hunger, poverty, and war through the progressive realization of human rights, in particular, the right to food and a healthy environment. Okay, now we have Rebecca. And again, if you were here this morning, everyone has been introduced to Rebecca. Rebecca Newbern is the co-founder and coordinator of Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library, a free seed lending library located in the Richmond Public Library in Richmond, California. She did her first permaculture design certificate with Christopher Shine, one of the founders of Basil, the first seed library and inspiration for Richmond Grows. She studied seed saving at seed school with Bill McDormand of the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. When she's not working on Richmond Grows projects, she's a middle school science and math teacher where she enthusiastically infuses sustainability into the curriculum. Occasionally, she can be seen walking around town dressed as the iconic Rosie the Riveter because she loves her can-do spirit and she's a hometown girl. Okay, we got Betsy. Betsy Goodman earned her Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies from Northern Arizona University. She is also a graduate of Seed School in Tucson, Arizona. Betsy is the production manager for Bloom's Organic Farm in Honey Creek, Iowa, where she has worked for 6 years. This is her 4th year as market manager for Main Street Farmers Market in Council Bluffs. Betsy has been the volunteer coordinator for the Common Soil Seed Library, located in 3 branches of Omaha Public Library. As volunteer coordinator of Common Soil, Betsy established the Seed Library, and her role includes helping with the organizational structure, teaching, and donating seed produced at Bloom's Organic Farm in Crescent, Iowa. In addition, she has pursued legislative action in an effort to preserve the cultural legacy of seed saving in Nebraska. Betsy also serves as the Secretary of Metro Omaha Food Policy Council and Youth Director at Beth El Synagogue. Okay, and last but not least, I'm on the end, Renee. Renee Tanner grew up in Tucson, where she learned the joys and challenges of growing plants in hot environments. Continuing to enjoy the heat, she is currently the Life Sciences Librarian at Arizona State University in Tempe. Prior to joining ASU, she was the Agricultural Librarian at Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana. Renee has a bachelor's degree in fine arts, a master's in soil and water science, and a master's in library science. She began the Seed Library at ASU in 2014 with the support and help of the Gardens at ASU, a student-run gardening club on the Tempe campus. Other contributors inside include the School of Sustainability at ASU, the Native Seed Search in Tucson, and the Urban Farm founded by Greg Peterson in Phoenix. To date, over 175 seed packets have been distributed through the Seed Library at ASU. Okay, so I'll just pass the microphone, and if everybody would just like to say perhaps the key point about outreach and educational needs in your organization or experience in just a brief moment. Thanks.
All right, hello everyone. I'm totally gonna borrow literacy from Jacob. I love that. That's really wonderful. Again, I'm Justine. I'm one of the seed librarians here in the Pima County Public Library, and I guess my sort of approach to outreach has been, I don't know how, in many ways it's served us very well, and probably in some ways not well enough, but sort of my approach to outreach has always been kind of this a sort of celebratory approach to the work that we're doing together as a community. And again, I think that's sort of where I'm coming from. My real ethos is sort of community driven, and so it's not just celebrating this sort of place that we live, but this work that we're engaged in together, and also this community that that supports us as well. And so I really try with my colleagues, we really try to find ways to take us outside of the library and introduce folks to the resources and kind of just celebrate how amazing our community is. And so yeah, there's probably many things that we could be doing as well. But
okay, I have I passed out some brochures here. Home Place Earth. That's my thing, my business. But to market our DVDs that we produced in the books. The information there. But if you go to homeplaceearth.com, there's a link to my blog, and I post something new every 2 weeks. And so if you're interested, you could put your email in where it does in the sidebar and get it. But if you go to homeplaceearth.com, there's a link. If the Earth is home place to over 7 billion people, we have to take care of it, which is how we came up with the name Home Place Earth. So you could read in the book about how I came to write the book, Seed Libraries. And when I researched all of the libraries I could find, which thank heavens it was only 163 back in January 2014, and not however many it is now. But I was looking at all these libraries. I visited as many as I could, mostly on the East Coast. But one of the things that really hit home for me is you need to have a good mission statement. And if you write a mission statement, then it'll firm it in your mind what you're here for, and let everyone else know what you're there for. And it needs to be more than just you. I've been to a couple where one person was starting it. Maybe they're successful, and maybe they're not, but it's going to wear you out. Anyway, and so you need to have a group of people in on this, all with different abilities and different interests to make it go, I believe. And in my book, I have a list of, extracted from all the things I've read, suggestions for mission statements that might give you some ideas, because some people want to be the underserved, and some people want to grow a bunch of seed savers, and some people just want to give out seeds. So some people wanted to make everyone healthy, and And how you form your mission statement, if you think you're going to need funding from someplace, might be the key to get funding if your mission coincides with somebody who has money or some group that has money. So you might keep that in mind. I could say a whole bunch of other stuff, but I had.
Yeah, I'm just looking through our flyer here, and we don't really necessarily have a mission statement. We just share seeds with those in need, and we do a lot of other things, and it's kind of reflected in the diverse partnerships that we've been able to establish across the city. And I think officially we have about 18 branches of the Toronto Seed Library all around the city, in places like a permaculture center, and there'll be 3 in tool libraries around the city, and churches, and universities, and colleges, and cafes, and Toronto People with AIDS drop-in center, and other kinds of community centers, and nature centers, and conservation groups. But our most popular branches are our traveling branches, where we go out into the community by request almost every day, especially in the springtime, sometimes twice a day. We have to split up and do double duty, and one time we did 3 events in one day we had to get to. And basically we're able to gather seeds from all around the seed system, whether it's leftover seeds. There's an organization in Toronto called Second Harvest, and they go around all the retailers and they collect all the food that's about to be thrown out while it's still good food, and then they redistribute to the food banks. And so we've become kind of the Second Harvest of seeds, and we know that we direct literally hundreds of thousands of packs of these commercial seeds that would otherwise be thrown out, and we're able to get those to people in need across the city who wouldn't otherwise have the funds or the ability to go and buy the seeds at market, or they're not available at the markets because they're throwing them out, throwing them off the shelves. And so, yeah, seed freedom is probably, to summarize, what our mission is, and it's part of a global movement working with seed savers across the world and kind of resisting the privatization of our seed supply, and revitalizing and regenerating the seed commons, and in a broader respect, the commons in general.
Wow. Richmond grows. I think for me, like, there's so many different aspects. I mean, I feel like a lot of our kind of initial outreach was, our first year was really around, so if you're just starting up a new library, I would say really think about your long-term goals, but also what are your short-term goals. So like our first year was just, let's get the word out. Because when we first had Seed Library, people were like, what do you mean borrow seeds? Don't people plant them? You know? and so it was really around reacquainting people with the concept of seed saving. And now when you say Seed Library, you know, there's much more of, I think, a cultural awareness that is connected with seed saving. And so for us, it was really about kind of putting a plan together about just like the first year, let's just get started and maybe get one class going. And for us, a lot of outreach over the last couple of years has really, you know, part of it's been in our community, but a lot of it's just been out to the larger world. So, yeah.
So the Nebraska emblem is the seed sower. And so after I finished seed school, I moved back and I said, oh, I'm going to start a seed library here. And of course it's going to take on because there's seed sowers, the emblem, and everyone's going to be into it. And I'll just start it up and and someone will teach. You know, I did not expect to be the only teacher. So, so education is something that I think everyone needs. Most people don't remember how to save seeds, which is why we're all here. We want to remember that, we want to pass it on. And so the way my approach for education is very similar to Bill McDormand's, and the way that he taught seed school is passion. You know, when you get excited about something and you share your passion, it creates encouragement. This is something that can be very daunting to someone that's just learning about it, especially if they don't have a science background. And they don't know about Latin, and they don't know about crossing, and they don't know about perfect flowers and all that stuff. So I think that creating that framework of understanding and encouraging people to start with easy things that you know they can't mess up on is really huge. And also just creating that framework of passion and excitement, whether that be bringing dirt into a class or bringing tomatoes out to people, or doing hands-on activities that really get people excited about the physical aspects of this work.
Yeah, I'm Renee with ASU Libraries, and my focus has been on education. So that was where I started. And I got Greg Peterson to come to, actually I partnered with the School of Sustainability, because I knew that they had money to provide lunch. And I thought, boy, if I feed them, they'll come. And so we had Greg Peterson speak about how to start your fall garden, and he talked about the seed library. And after that, a lot of excited students came and checked out seeds. So my outreach has been kind of homegrown, or as it were, and very local.
Okay, so I guess the first question I have for the panel is what type of outreach, and of course everybody's situation is different, but what type of outreach do you think has been most successful with your organization or in your experience, and how did you measure that success?
Yeah, that's good. So the types of outreach that we've done that's been really successful. I would say actually the partnerships that we've done. So most of ours, again, we're sort of, you know, we readjusted our vision of what the seed library is going to be once we got started. From we were going to encounter this community of seed savers to we need to educate our community how to, you know, what's the difference between soil and dirt, and so I think our most successful, and again, we're coming from a place of, we're librarians, and some of us might have particular proclivities towards gardening, but we're still sort of novices in many ways to this concept of seed saving, and so in sort of establishing these partnerships, and through these partnerships, we have hosted many gardening programs throughout the library system, and I would say those are probably the sort of one of the more successful, and I think we probably gauge that success on attendance, you know, the people that turn out. I don't know if that's necessarily a valid always, or that's the complete picture anyway, but I think that's been sort of one of them, and just getting people familiar with gardening. And then I guess the other would really, for us, has been also this library planter project that we've been engaged in. And because it's highly visible and it's very interactive, and I was at this panel across the street the last hour, and we were sort of talking about story, and you know, we're talking about the story of the seeds, but what has been really remarkable in those sorts of interactions, and it's just sort of this notion of cultivating even what story is. And so having those kinds of, creating those sorts of opportunities in our interactions with the people who are using the seed, you know, using the seed library, where we can engage and sort of develop and cultivate story and share. And so that's probably been another one. And for me, I would say that's one of the most successful, but I know that also the educational parts and having these workshops is also really important.
So what successful programs have we had?
Just about outreach and what's been the most successful, and then how do you sort of measure and gauge success?
Okay, evaluation. I guess it would be if people bring seats back, if that's your goal. And I have not had the seed library, but I've studied them and visited them. When I left the community college in May of 2010, after 11 and a half years, I left because I felt I needed to address a larger community. Did not exactly know what that would mean. We just put our second DVD out. And that I developed as teaching material, and you can read about that in there. But then eventually I went on to write the 2 books. But my daughter moved back from Arkansas and took over teaching those classes. So I'm still involved somewhat in the community college, and she's the one who started the seed library there, which then I wrote an article, a blog post about seed libraries, which ultimately led me to write this book. But so my experience is mostly from hers and the one in Abingdon, Virginia, Washington County Seed Savers, and I mentioned in the book. They were one of the early ones I visited, and they had just started in 2013. I believe they started at the same time my daughter started hers. And I visited them in August, and they started, you know, that spring. And Will Stein told me And he knew he came down to get information for this book I was writing. He said, you need to hurry up and finish that book so I know what to do next. And I think Rebecca gets everyone off to a great start, but I think it's that next thing. And so it's part of, what I had written in there, all these ideas, and from my own experience. But some things that they've been successful for, I know at Washington County, library programs, as you know, you might get 3 people show up, you might get 25, you might get 75. They said when I visited them each again the next 2 springs, just in April I was there, and one of the things they give away, they had shirts. They gave people shirts if they brought seeds back. Sure, with the emblem. I don't think they'll always do that. They do have some funds they can tap, and then it made me think that maybe. Not everyone's getting for shirts. Maybe you give a trowel or something useful, the first time that somebody would bring seeds back. But the first year, often they didn't get so many seeds back. From all the places I talked to, mostly it was the second year they felt that they were getting seeds back. So if the seeds are just dribbling in, don't worry, they'll pick up the second year. They mentioned when I was just down at Abingdon, he said, and so then I said, I'm going to be on these panels, you got any ideas? He said, field trips, take them to see places. And they had a field trip to a farm, but it could be, one of the ones I wrote about was, I can't remember what state they were, a fire station down the road. One of the firemen from this library, seed library, it's in the Midwest, I think, had a garden. The fireman had a garden there and produced food for the firemen, they cooked there. And she took part of her one of her seed library programs as they went for a walk down and looked at that garden. So having things growing. In Pittsburgh, they have a garden right out front. And it was used in another program. And that's the thing, the seed librarians, you just don't spread yourself too thin. You need to have other programs connect with yours. There was a garden program in Pittsburgh that was started by some funds for something else, and at Gardening Time it was called, and it was separate from the seed library, but there was a lot of overlap, so not the same person was doing the same thing. So there are just so many ways to link in with other things. Make it part of the landscape. You could just walk outside and see things go to seed. But you have to educate people that looks nice. Otherwise, somebody's going to come pull it out. And at the college, community college, my daughter had you get all this seed donated, and some of it is on the older side, maybe from the seed companies, and then it sits there for 2 more years, And so she had her students do and this was just extra, I guess, volunteer, do germination tests. So that's a big education thing. People need to know how to do germination tests. And some of the stuff had really poor germination, and the college just okayed some more area for her to put in another garden. And so they have a seed garden, and I think that's one of the big things going to happen. A seed garden to grow out some of those varieties that had low germination, and she'll replenish the seeds. So, but as far as how they knew it was successful, whether it was Washington County or my daughter's, people come back again and bring seeds.
So I'm not sure how many seed libraries have dedicated websites. Maybe show of hands. So we have like a dedicated website and Facebook and Twitter and an email newsletter. And so not everybody, but at our sign-up tables and at our branches, there's a newsletter that people can opt in to sign up for. And so that's a pretty basic step that I find is helpful in outreach and sustaining the community ongoing. So we also do special campaigns, like when we get a rare seed donated, then we'll kind of get some artists in the community to design some kind of cool poster. And one of our most recent campaigns, our first one was a bottle gourd. So we got some bottle gourd seeds, and we had a grow your own water bottle campaign. And so people thought that was quite fun. People were special requesting the seeds. And then this spring we launched our pawpaw planting campaign. And if people are familiar with the pawpaw, which is kind of one of the largest fruit trees native to North America, and it's pretty like a tropical fruit. that grows in Toronto is in its northernmost range, and so it's kind of a shock to people in our city to discover that they can actually grow this amazing fruit that they've never heard of before, that they didn't know existed or that it grows there, and it's amazing, delicious, and it's kind of exotic. So we've had a huge success with that, connecting with local growers to get live plants as well as the seeds to teach people how to do that. We've also done a number of native plants campaigns and partnering with indigenous artists to kind of communicate that native plants are more than pollinators, that they have kind of a special importance in terms of medicine and history and culture and spirituality for indigenous peoples here in Turtle Island. So that's been a very successful one. Our most requested seed last year was actually the milkweed planting for the monarch. And so there's a lot of concern around the environment. We produce our community zine, the CD zine. So we get people in the community contribute stories and content and art and illustrations, and then we can also use that through our social media as well. We have a print copy and a PDF download online. We've also developed kind of a translation project that we have out at our tables so that when people come and they don't necessarily speak English, they can kind of flip through the sheet here. And we have Vietnamese and Italian and Farsi and Chinese and Bengali and Arabic and English and French and Urdu. And I think we've attended 3 different New Year's celebrations already this year. And so we've done a pretty good job of connecting with a lot of different ethnic communities in the city who are some of the best gardeners, and they're bringing seeds over and they're working on locally adapting them, but there's this huge barrier that exists still in kind of the mainstream gardening movement. And we've also done a good job of connecting with already existing groups, and so not reinventing the wheel, but rather kind of taking inventory of what's already out there, and then not duplicating efforts, but rather supporting people where they can and offering our own unique seed knowledge and experience so that we kind of are able to just join in on a lot of community events and fairs, and so that connecting with other groups, and they invite us back. And so people look forward to that and seeing us out in the community. And yeah, we've also been working with the public library, and since the fall we've had workshops scheduled in about a dozen public libraries in the city. We go and do introductory workshops. So now we're developing a kind of seed school to take it to the next level so that people who want to become intermediates or experts or get into ecological seed production on a larger scale, we'll have that route to take as well. And then evaluating success, we don't take a lot of data because we're all volunteer run, and it's a lot of work to gather the data and input. It creates kind of a layer of bureaucracy and another barrier for participation. So we mostly measure our success through stories that people share with us, and they're kind of testimonials. And also just kind of by the quantity of seeds coming in and out. Like, it's pretty incredible. I had my swimming in seeds moment where you're like, oh, so many seeds, and it's like, wow, I never thought I'd be in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a social media queen, my sister is, but I am not. But I think it's helpful to have, and it reaches just one section of the population, and not necessarily the more vulnerable population that we're looking to reach. I think for those of people that are putting seed libraries in public libraries, I think their right in itself is a great way to do outreach, just because, I mean, that was the reason that we wanted to go into a public library, because we knew right there we would have access to the broad spectrum of the population. And having signage so people that come in, you know, can interact and say, oh, that's what that is. And the librarians have been just really awesome. Like, they made a little frequently asked questions things that people come and they can just read it and kind of go, oh, I can check out seeds. And so there's a little bit more detailed thing there. It's now nice, of course, with all the computers that people can also then watch the orientation video if they want to do that. Because when we first started, we were really doing a lot more outreach because it was such a new concept that we were doing in-person orientations, and we had a couple people that were doing Spanish orientations as well. It's a lot of work doing that, especially with the volunteer base. So at a certain point, we felt like we had gotten enough kind of momentum going in our community that wasn't as necessarily as the amount of time versus the number of people showing up. It wasn't the best use of our volunteer time, but it was a good starting point. We also, in the very beginning, did a lot of local events. Sadly, I'm missing the Cinco de Mayo one this weekend, so that's obviously a big one because our community is about 50% Latino. However, we'd like to try to get to local events. Unfortunately, they're often a lot of times during my end of the school year, which is really hard for me to reach, such as our Juneteenth event, because we also have a large African American population in our community. Some of the things we've also done in terms of outreach is crop swaps and around the local library so people can come. We have one in the local library, then we have one in a community, just someone's front yard. It's a little bit further away from the public library in a different section of our community. And we also have gotten a number of stuff translated into Spanish. And I think that beautiful thing about it being just a community, and I just really encourage you, if you do get things translated, to send them to like my email address at richmondgrows@gmail.com. So we've been able to get things from other communities in Chinese. Right now I just got an email from a woman in Quebec who's going to translate stuff into French. So we'll have a whole French collection of stuff. So really asking people, I think that's the way that it really grows in terms of being able to reach some of our more vulnerable populations, is as someone gets something to share it with us, and then we can send it out and put it on the libraries.net site so that those resources are available to a larger population. Some of our goals in terms of outreach, we had connected with our local food pantry and wanted to do Seed Library there. And I think their staff they've been like, oh yeah, we're really interested, and they just haven't really picked up that thing. And I'm just like, if it's not easy, just don't push it, and when the time is right, we'll kind of go there again. And along with Jacob in terms of measuring stuff, I felt like there was a choice we made, which is we could spend a lot of time monitoring data, and being that we're all volunteer, that didn't feel like as good. We had this one volunteer who went, and she's like, I'm a master gardener. This is a great volunteer. I'm a master gardener. I'm a lawyer, and I'm a library service. She had a master's in library services, and she's like, I can catalog everything and do. And I'm like, and she's like, oh, and I can work for the next 3 months, like 30 hours a week for you. And I'm like, as awesome as it is, and you could catalog everything for us, it's like the long term is like as soon as you walk out the door, no one's going to pick that up. And I was just like, we have so many other projects you can do, and she really helped us write a lot of our curriculum. So that was how we decided to use that expertise instead. And she looked at our catalog system and gave us some really great suggestions. So that was really helpful.
So Common Soil Seed Library, in addition to offering seeds, offers books available through checkout, online LibGuide, and classes. And so any community event that we attend, which is minimal because the staff is already kind of overloaded, and I'm a volunteer and I'm busy too. So we don't do a lot of community outreach. We had a very soft opening, not even, maybe just a small press release, very small publicity. And so we measure everything in usage. And also the Seed Library, I must say, has grown. For the last 2 years, it was only in one location. I think there's 8 branches of the Omaha Public Library, and it's through the Millennium System, very similar to Pima County, that everything is cataloged. So we can measure everything through the catalog, which I'm going to tell you our usage statistics here in a moment. But now we're also in South Omaha and in Elkhorn. So it's basically, one is kind of north central, one is southeast, and one is extremely west. And so we kind of have spread ourselves out, and the library has a goal of being in all locations in the next 10 years. And anytime we go to an event, we do food day every year, we do neighborhood, go to neighborhood association meetings, and then go to gardening clubs. I don't do a lot of that. Carol Erkins is Rachel Steiner is the branch manager at Benson, and then Carol Erkins is the main staff member who does a lot of this work. So I have to give her a thank you because she's amazing. But anytime we go to events, we have this little one-page document that talks about the classes that we offer ongoing. And we have a trifold document that talks about Common Soil. So the first year, as of March 2013, we had 239 packets of seeds checked out. As of March of 2014, we had 659 packets checked out. And that's from January to March of that year. And then, so last fall, when I was checking the statistics, it was about 5,000 total packets checked out. And so far, year to date, since January to now, we've had 1,082 packets when I left. That was not including April's. So that was as of the end of March. So those are our statistics. So I'm very happy that with the Millennium System that we're able to measure statistics, because that's helped me a lot as far as the legislation is concerned. And then the other thing that we do as far as community outreach is something that I started when I got done with my seed training here at Native Seed Search. Before the seed library opened, I started a seed share. For the first year there was 50 people, and the second year there was 200, and that was one location. And then this past year there was 5 locations and 600 people. And this next year there is a woman named Judy Grace who's doing amazing work, and she has already lined up 30 different locations for our seed share. We call it a seed share because we want everyone to feel included. We don't want people that don't have seed to not come. So we want everyone to be there. And so it's crazy. I know, it's just, we're going for about 50 to, she said 500 locations, which I think is unattainable, but I'll report back to you next year. The Seed Share, National Seed Share Day is next January, so we're taking a while to prepare. And then Edible Omaha has jumped on board with this, and at the last seed share, there was a lack of seeds. People weren't bringing stuff to contribute, and I was one of the only seed savers that was there with seeds. There was maybe a handful. Most things were donated from businesses. And so I just put out that urge saying everyone has to do this now. You know, we all have to be contributing here. So the Edible Omaha is putting out a challenge to all of the community gardens, and Nebraska Community Gardens has grown a lot, and the community gardens have a challenge to save seed this year. And if they save seed this year, then they will get recognized in the community to be a seed saver. So that's another outreach program that we've done that I think is extremely successful.
Yeah, one thing I'm really struck with that Cindy brought up is that you need a group of people to do this, and that's really hitting me because I've been kind of doing this solo. So the kind of outreach that I've been doing is, again, a lot of education. So more events like getting a speaker to come. So that's something that I don't have to do a lot of planning for. We do have a marketing department, and so I'll have them make a poster with the speaker's name and try to get that into several different media outlets. I've also done like a book display, so you can do something that's a little bit lower scale, you know, but that people can stop and see what's available on seeds on the topic of plants. I also had a book discussion about plants, so what plants know. That's a really fascinating book. Plants are kind of smart. I don't know, it's very interesting. And I also have the gardening club. They do some Facebook posts for me if I've got some new seeds in and that kind of thing.
Okay, so, and again, we all have such different situations, but one thing that we found in our library is how do you teach people how to use the seed library? Because we do have a lot of sort of procedures and steps. How do you get people to check out the seeds and how to actually go about returning seeds? And then I guess the second part of the question is then, so how do you educate people how to use the seed library, and then how do you educate people about gardening or cooking or seed saving? So it's sort of a two-parter.
You know, for us, I think our scale has really enabled us to reach a lot of folks, but I think our scale also presents some challenges for us in terms of being able to reach a lot of folks. You know, we are a relatively small staff who work on the seed library. We have 8 sort of seed library outposts in the 27 branches. And ostensibly, there's supposed to be a staff member at each one of these locations that sort of is the steward for that library and sort of the liaises with their immediate community and helps them connect to the seed library. But we are, we have other tasks. We wear other hats in our libraries, and so that has been sort of the challenge, and that people can access them at other branches that don't have a staff member who is necessarily as connected to the seed library. You know, our library has a number of different and really wonderful services, and there's a lot going on, and so that may not be a service that somebody is as familiar with, and maybe some of them are even sort of fearful if they start talking about it, somebody's going to ask them about gardening questions or something. So, that presents sort of a challenge, and kind of through this work that we were doing with the University of Arizona's Bureau of Applied Research and Anthropology, they had begun sort of collecting, sort of filming some of the seed library from the sort of beginning through our opening, and then as we started to as people started to check out seeds, and then sort of collecting these stories and sort of these sort of community vignettes, sort of creating this this story of the seed library's community. And sort of what we discovered through that and in that work, or what sort of came out of that, was because we realized, because BARA is also really, as anthropologists, they're sort of good at sort of helping you, sort of asking the right questions and sort of getting at the heart of what you need. And so we kind of realized that we weren't able to reach our community in the way that we had wanted to. I mean, we were doing some outreach, but again, we had, we're sort of a small team and had the pressures of sort of our regular responsibilities in our branches. And so BARA put together for us this how-to video for us that is on YouTube to sort of help folks, but of course it sort of necessitates that somebody clicks on the video and watches the video, so there are challenges there. And then we also worked to, we started off with brochures and used the language that Rebecca had provided for Richmond Grows, and so we use brochures. We have taken, sort of the that kind of framework that Rebecca provided and kind of refined it to reflect sort of what we were experiencing in our community. And so, but we use that also, and it's very colorful. We worked with our library's graphic designer, so they are very sort of attractive materials, I think, to kind of help, invite people to take them. But I think in large part, it's just sort of our, and we use Facebook, actually. Facebook, we have a pretty successful Facebook page. I mean, social media, sometimes interest sort of ebbs and flows, but for the most part, I think we have roughly around 2,000 folks on our Facebook page, and so we use that to connect, and we're also part of other, just in the community, active in the community, and get the word out about the seed library and how it functions, and we do a lot of outreach at farmers markets. We're starting to work with schools more, and attending, we're sort of have become kind of one of the go-to places for organizations, gardening organizations. They, because again, sort of we've reached out to them, we sort of put ourselves on their radar, and so now they're coming to us and providing us with opportunities to go in and introduce people to the seed library, and so we use that as a way to promote. And I don't know, Susanna, remembering things that I might be forgetting. I'm sure there's plenty.
Okay, how do we reach people? When my daughter first started, Betsy, her name's Betsy, started the one at the college, and when she went to start to teach there, I told her, make the librarians and the security guard your best friends. So anyway, we have great librarians at that community college. There's also an automotive program there and some other classes going on. But when I was teaching there, my students made the best use of the library other than any other program. So they kept buying books for it. We had the best, I think in the whole country, they had the best selection of sustainable agriculture and permaculture books in that library. And as soon as Betsy had said that she might want to start a seed library, I mean, for the whole next year, she was and this was just an extra thing she was doing. The librarians kept handing her. I'd go in there and they'd say, when's she going to start that seed library? And right away, they bought a cabinet, the kind you would put, it's for CDs. It looks like, one of the card catalogs for CDs. And it was sitting there saying, Betsy, anytime you get these seeds, we're ready. Betsy was really concerned about orientation. And she read all Rebecca's stuff, and so she thought she should have a class. So every the first few months, maybe every month or two, either she taught an evening session or another person taught an evening session that was maybe 45 minutes to an hour of instruction for some information about how to save seeds and how the seed library worked and basic information like that. And then they visited the seed library, could visit, the first part was in the classroom, then they went over to the library, looked at all the seeds, she explained everything, and they could sign up, put their page in the notebook and take out seeds if they'd like right then. The Master Gardener group in the county need to have, well, they need to put in volunteer hours, but they also need to have education hours. And attending that class that she had, it was free, you can come and learn about it, was part of their education, approved for their education credit. So she had a lot of Master Gardeners show up in that class. Whether they actually took out seeds or not, I don't know. But at first, you know, it was an extra thing to go to, and all these extra activities wear you down, particularly if that's the volunteer part. So eventually she stopped doing the classes, and just as all the information is there, you could just walk in, it's a table and a cabinet, and read all you need to know about how to take out the seeds and things like that. And I think, and probably she has a link somewhere that shows the videos, whether it's Pima County or Rebecca's, if they want to watch a video. And let's see, I'm trying to, Washington County Seed Library in Abingdon, Virginia. They also had some classes at the beginning, education classes the first year about seed saving and stuff. And they're really good about having some programs, and it keeps people coming back. They also have had some authors. I've been there the last 2 years. It's convenient because it was on my way down to Asheville, North Carolina for the Mother Earth News Fair. But then they had some other people in there. They had Janice Ray come, who wrote The Seed Underground. The Seed Underground, Will Stein, that was the book that got him really into the seeds. Trying to think of what else on there. You know, one thing I want to say though about when you attract people to come and take the seeds, if nobody is watching, some really bad things could happen. Well, it's not bad things. Things you had. No, that hasn't been a problem. But it's then I went to. The first road trip I took to visit the seed libraries was down to Abingdon, Virginia. It was about 6 hours away. My husband and I went down there and talked to them. And one of the first things he said that they bought seeds. I thought, don't you know seed companies will give you seeds? and then the next one we went, Hinton, West Virginia, on that same trip, they bought seeds. And I thought, don't you know people will give you seeds to start? But at Washington County, their cabinet was in the back of the library. And Will told me that the first week they had it open, someone came in and like took enough seeds for his whole garden. You know, they didn't have the idea of just a small amount of seeds to grow out. And then we went to Hinton, West Virginia, and their cabinet, a small cabinet, right across from, like if this is a checkout desk, right over there by those chairs, they could see it. That was their seed cabinet. I thought, well, that would solve a problem with people taking too many seeds. But you have to educate your whole staff, even if they're not really into the seeds, to watch out for that stuff. Because when I went back last year, last spring, a year ago, and they'd been going, the person who had started it, the part-time employee started the seed library, had then moved on to, I don't know, grad school, I guess. And so that passionate person wasn't there. The library, they still were maintaining with what they had, but I walked in and looked in, they knew I was coming, but I was looking in the drawers and there was no seeds hardly. And turns out, what the story they told me is this homeless woman had come in, and there's a lot of homeless people that will pop in and out of that library, had cleaned them out of seeds, and the one she didn't get the first time, she came back and got it the second time. So I don't know what she was doing with the seeds, but they were very disappointed, but they didn't tell me about having plans to replenish them, so I don't know. But and the other thing I want to say about the one thing, you can put your checkout, all of your information about checking it out, you can use your website and your Facebook. But if you have Facebook, make sure it's public, because not everyone has Facebook to log into. And also put your province or state, not just your town, so other people can find out where you're at.
So When we first started, I think we did a lot of outreach, a lot of targeted outreach in particular. And, something I thought was kind of funny was we would get people to go. We were trying to get into the library and get into communities and get people to walk into their local libraries because librarians respond to community need. And so we get people to walk into their libraries and ask where the seed library is, just like assuming that it's something that's common and in every library. And then when they learn that they don't have a seed library, they get really angry and start throwing things. And then we would come in later and then say, hey, would you like to start a seed library? And then they'd be like, oh wow, yeah, people have been coming in and asking about the seed library. So after a couple of years of this, we were getting a lot of, now people are coming and outreaching to us. And so we're mostly just kind of struggling to keep up with the need for seed in the city. So there's each branch is unique to its place and people are involved. And so a lot of them are staffed by volunteers that have varying degrees of knowledge around how it works and how seeds are grown. And so we try to offer like basic training to the staff who are there and enlightening them as to how the system works, but maintaining that it's free for everybody and people can take what they need. Just so that when people make the effort to come out and to go there and to look for seeds, that they can leave with seeds and that they can feel as though the system's working for them. Yeah, so we have like a sheet displayed at the different branches, and we're working on a branch package that can go and sit at all the different branches in the city. We've also piloted different check-in and check-out forms and a seed request form at some of the branches, but what ends up happening is, like what Rebecca said, is that people were filling out these forms, then we're like, oh no, now what do we do with these forms? Because somebody has to then input the data into some kind of cataloging system, and that just was like an extra layer of work that we just didn't have the capacity for at the time. Although we get seeds from these retailers, we also get them from local seed farmers, and we get the community seeds, and we also get these really rare special seeds that are coming into the system. And so we have kind of a two-stream approach, like the community streams, and then where they're just in and out really quickly, and then there's more special seeds that are by request or that we can funnel to people who really know what they're doing and that they can be sure to grow them out and bring them back. And so that's really important. Yeah, I think that was the question.
So in terms of how to educate people on how to use the library, as I mentioned earlier, we have the online orientation, really set it up as how people can interface with it. We're very into the icons, which are like Rose and River, like Save Seeds, super easy, start here. So we really rely a lot on signage in our library because it is an open system. Ours is not close to the library desk. It used to be, but now it's off the edge, so it is very much an honor system. And quantities are always going to be kind of a concern because we do have a lot of take 2 to 3 seeds. I mean, it's all over. You have to open up a container. It says take 2 to 3 seeds for every plant you intend to grow. I mean, even there, I'm sure there's people that still just take the entire package, which happens, which is one of those things why it's nice to have backups if something's important. In terms of, and we also have a similar thing in terms of borrowing, in terms of having kind of this two-stream approach. When we get seeds in that are important, for example, I mentioned, you might have heard about the great Aunt Rosie's pole bean, which I put in the presentation earlier. It's just that's an important seed to our community, and we don't just put that out there because it's only my neighbor and I that are growing it. So if we just put that out there and it disappeared, and that's been growing in our community for 25 years, and I lost my collection, and he's possibly going to lose his house, and we would lose that seed. So if not losing his house, he knows exactly where it is. The bank is taking it away. Those are very different scenarios. Let's be mindful of our language here. So I think it's important for us when we have important seed to our community to get people to grow it out that are knowledgeable, that are willing to make that commitment, and then we can make those seeds widely available to our community. So we kind of have that approach with our borrowing process. In terms of returns, our newsletter is kind of a main piece in terms of educating people about, we'll say, hey, those beans, remember, let them go. And so we'll try to educate people in our newsletter. We have about 500 members. And once again, it's not the whole breadth of our community that's going to be getting that, but hopefully it'll connect with enough people that will start to do those, those processes. And we also have a Google spreadsheet that we're creating, which I'm going to put out on the next Cool Beans newsletter. I'm going to have to fine tune it a little. It's a little out of control right now with all the seeds we have offered in our collection. And so people can actually click on the link, and I have TA, so I do, just in case you're wondering how I get all this work done. I have 8th graders that type this all up for me. So if there's typos, understand the context. But they're actually making labels that people can, one, if you want to grow something out of the collection, here's what we're growing, here's what we have available, and they can click on, see the description, and then if they lose them, we give them the seeds if it's part of the grow out program. Here's the seeds, here's pre-printed envelopes, here's seed saving instructions, and then if they lose the seeds or someone else borrows the seeds, that's what we have in the collection, and people can print that. And so hopefully, as we start to educate people about how to interface with that document, then maybe we're getting more seeds that is better labeled in the return process. And also with the Google spreadsheet, I would say also in terms of returns, connecting with people that are using our, the community members that are using our seed library, doing it as a Google spreadsheet versus some other type of Excel, it makes it so much easier that I can give it to I can just grab the binder, give it to my TA or some volunteer, and they can enter all the names in from the other new members, as opposed to it being all on my computer, and then it has to be my responsibility. So it's nice because it's something that can be movable to community member to community member. In terms of saving seeds, once again, not everything needs to happen at once. Like we started with the super easy seed saving class our first year. Just recently, we got approved as a Master Gardener approved program because half of our volunteers were Master Gardeners, and if you have a Master Gardener program, being able to go through that paperwork to become a Master Gardener approved project, they can do their volunteer hours, and so now a lot of them are actually teaching our classes because they can actually get that as part of their teaching things. So some of the courses that we offer in terms of improving the quality of seed is we have an organic gardening class. We have a super easy seed saving class. That is the one that's actually has gone through the Dog and Pony Show with Master Gardeners, and now is a Master Gardener approved program. And so if you have a Master Gardener approved program, if you have a Master Gardener program, maybe they would use that and let you use that program. We have all of these classes online, so on our Richmond Grows Seeds.org website, you can click that on and download those classes, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then we have an advanced seed saving class, and then we have an indoor seed starting class for tomatoes and peppers, which we need to start indoors in January and February to get out there in time. Oh, and then obviously the beautiful thing about being in a public library is whenever we offer a course, whether it's teaching about dye plants or herbal medicine, the public library has always been just incredibly generous in terms of purchasing books that our guest lecturers, who are all community members volunteering their time, and then we feature those in our newsletter, and then we put out book collections, the little displays, so we were able to kind of promote the library cross-pollinate.
Okay, so I think that the most important, we didn't have publicity really options as far as like showing something on television or broadcasting something as a poster or anything like that really. So it's talking it up all the time. Being in the grocery store, do you garden? Did you know you can check out seeds at the library? Oh no. Oh, well you can check out 6 packets a month. Do I have to return them? No, you don't, but we'll teach you if you'd like to learn. Does it cost anything? No, so that's a constant thing. That's like, I could probably say it in my sleep. And when they say, oh, this is great, I say, yes, tell everyone you know. And they say, oh yeah. No, tell everyone you know. Because that person-to-person communication is really, really powerful. So that's, I think, the way that we've gotten it out. And then we, staff education with our 2 new branches, they did staff education. With our first branch, they did not do staff education, and it was a really hard learning curve. The staff didn't get it, they didn't understand why it was important, people were coming up with a lot of questions, and it was just ongoing little kinks here and there. So that's been worked out. We did staff education for the other 2 branches, and in those locations, it's grown so much faster than it did in the first branch, so I would say that's huge. You gotta get people excited about it. And then as far as returning seeds, I developed this seed return form. We didn't have a way to really decipher about returning seeds, which was, what's pure, what's not, and the people's methods. So people were returning things, and the librarians, if the right librarians were working that knew the right questions to ask, then they asked the questions, and then we could decide whether that seed could be distributed or not. And sometimes if it was like a perfect flower, then we knew that, okay, we could take a chance with this. But at this point, I think it's really important to have a seed return form, just because it really just streamlines that process. So if anyone's interested in this form, adopting this form for their library, I'd be happy to distribute it. And then when people return seed, as it was said, Jacob said, thank you, Jacob, it's something really important that he said, is there is special seed that is returned. So occasionally you get these gems that are returned, and you get really excited about it, and you want to make sure that that stays and lives on. So when we get special seed returned, and that goes directly into the hands of myself, and then either I grow it out, or I have a community of growers that grows seed for common soil, and then we make the population bigger enough to distribute it. So that's all I have to say about that.
Well, one of the things that I think is really, what I'm focused on is lending out seeds, so not so much taking the seeds back in. So my education, I think the most successful piece of that is a planting calendar. So it's one that someone's developed over years of living in the Phoenix area, and knows when this and that can be planted. And it's pretty easy to understand and pretty easy to follow. So that's something that we hand out when someone comes in to get some seeds. And another piece of the education is people really don't have to know how to use the seed library that I have, because it's really rudimentary. But it's more important for me that the staff know that it's there, and then when someone comes up to the desk, they know where to go get it, and how many packets somebody can check out. Like you say, I guess everyone's kind of had that experience of maybe someone taking too many. I didn't have any limit on how many a person could take out until somebody came in and took 50, and then they took 25 more, and I said, uh-oh, I could get wiped out. So I said, it was kind of arbitrary. I said 10, 10 a month. So, and anybody can come. You don't have to be a patron. You don't have to be a student. You don't have to have a library card. Anybody can check out the seeds. So I think the planting calendar has been really helpful.
I wanted to add two things about, one is in terms of the seed saving. We had talked earlier in the previous panel that was here about kind of the guidelines or protocol for seed libraries. So this is going to be on the seedlibraries.net. It's going to be a working document that we're hoping to work on here at the conference. So it is, the first part of it is already uploaded at seedlibraries.net, and then I'll put the second piece on. So one is inventory guidelines for seed libraries, and then the other one is 6 tips for saving seeds. And then in terms of Betsy's form that she mentioned, I can also put it on the seedlibraries.net thing on the front page, and then later on I'll just tuck it under like starting a seed library so other people can benefit from it as well.
I want to mention since you mentioned forms, originally, did the form you show, and everyone uses forms, I mean, it's just an easy thing to do.
That form originally came from Basil, so let's go give it back.
Oh, yeah, Basil, yes. But originally, a lot of them said, you signed your name that said you will bring seats back. Of course, there's no way to enforce that. But now, in light of legal issues, isn't it suggested not to have any commitment?
Your membership form should not say, you are required to return seeds.
So your forms really should say, we encourage you to return seeds, we invite you to return seeds, but taking out the requirement, because when you start to make it contractual, then you start going into a different legal area. So making it not a barter, not an exchange, but like this is indeed a community gift.
Okay, I'm just going to do one more quick question, and then everybody could just have a very short response, and then we can open it up to questions for the last few minutes. Everybody talked about volunteers and needing a team of people to help out. So I guess my question would be, how do you successfully integrate volunteers into your seed library? Are they going to be doing your outreach? Are they going to be doing your education? Would you have seed stewards, or how do you think you would be able to best use or integrate volunteers?
Well, my volunteers really have been other staff members who are active gardeners, and so they were excited about the project and wanted to volunteer their time. And so they're pretty stable, so I don't have to worry about them coming and going. I did have a couple students that wanted to, one wanted to develop a computer program for the inventory, and we got so far and didn't get quite done with it, and so it kind of unraveled, I guess. So it can be difficult when you're working with students who are coming and going, and so if, you know, as I do that some more, I think chunking it down and making the projects really have a very definite end and beginning.
So on top, off the head, I can think of 3 different types of volunteers that we work with at Common Soil. I guess 4 is myself. But seed packaging, there's one volunteer at the library that just works on Common Soil stuff. So they make all of our labels, and some people, I thought I had a seed packet here, but I don't. You probably have seen our packaging on some of the social media. It's pretty simple. There's just 2 stickers that we put on each envelope, and then we distribute the seeds from larger packets into the smaller packets. So one volunteer at the library does that, and then I think a lot of people volunteer at the library and they get hours for it. So that's great. And then we have a seed packaging party, which is really fun. And a lot of community people come to that event. There's probably 30 to 50 people that attend that every year, and it's really fun. And we just maybe hang out for 3 hours, and we package a majority of our seeds at that point in time. And it's just something that anyone can do, all ages, family members. So that's a great thing to encourage everyone to get involved in, and then they feel a sense of ownership of the program, which I think is also important. And then we have our grower volunteers, so our people that just believe in what we're doing and want to support it in whatever way they can. And those people are knowledgeable seed savers, or even if they're not knowledgeable, then they have the desire to become knowledgeable. And I work directly with those people. The library basically gives me the seed that we want to be grown out in excess, and then I hand it to the grower, and I have a form. Not a form, I just keep track on my computer. This is who has that seed. And then throughout the growing season, I check up with them and say, okay, how's it going? Have you saved this? If not, it's time to put it in the ground, type of thing. And then in the fall, just kind of push them a little bit. But at the same time, when they're volunteers, there's not a lot of expectation. So we have lost some seed varieties that way. So we always just kind of keep half back or a quarter back. So that's an important ethic to keep in mind.
So I work full-time. I mean, I think many of us do. And I think, or some of you, it's your actual job to do the library. So for me, I was really looking at how to make this as self-serve as possible. So for me, the packaging of seeds just sounded like the biggest nightmare in terms of like use of my time. And I totally understand that that's one way to go, and it's a valuable way. And for me, I was just like, the library can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to just have to really work on the starting point of like, how do I educate people about how to take seeds out of a packet and make their own labels, because I can't do that for them. I'm not going to do that for them. So we do work. We do monthly work parties. We have about 7 to 8 people that volunteer regularly. We're not even that monthly. We're kind of maybe every other month, and we definitely stop at about November. We don't do November, December, or January. End of January, we'll pick up again. So we'll do a couple, and maybe it's an hour work party every other month. And that's kind of stocking and just organizing and pulling seed. So I think there's a balance in terms of like when you're looking for volunteers or how to kind of utilize your energies, is looking at what do you need to do and what are you passionate about. And you know, for example, someone may come in and you might have certain needs, but if they're really interested in collecting and working on your native collection, because that's their passion, that's what their whole garden's about, it's like, go for that and really encourage that and let that kind of, you know, take whatever form it needs to. So I would say leave that space open for volunteers to come in and say, what do you care about? Like, what are you interested in? Because if they've got that, they're going to go for it. And what else did I write down? We had the Go Out program. And also in terms of when we have on our membership form, we have a like check-off list in terms of how do you want to, you know, what do you want to offer? How do you want to help? And we have things like mentors, database, organization, which is just coming and helping to kind of clean the library out, outreach, grow outs, and then, I don't know, all the forms out there. I think everybody has seen it before, or many of you have seen it before. And some of those we haven't even activated. The mentor piece, we just have not had the bandwidth to do. But you know, over time, hopefully we will. So, and then also, is there anything else that you have that we don't know about? And we have had grant writers come in as well. Let's help us out.
I'll probably start by saying it's important to have a volunteer coordinator, somebody whose job it is just to kind of work with volunteers. In our case, we're looking for a volunteer coordinator, which is kind of hard. It's hard to fill. And it should be somebody who's quite knowledgeable about what's going on in the organization and what need to be filled. So we have kind of a volunteer orientation sheet, and eventually it'll probably evolve into some kind of package that will kind of be a self-serve volunteer orientation package, so that we don't have to go over everything with people. Every single person wants to get involved, and then right at the end that they actually don't want to be involved, and then go off and do something else. So we have about a dozen or so different roles that people can fill. Everything from doing what we do, as kind of we call ourselves cultivators, kind of our core group, and we slowly bring in new people into the group as they have the time and ability to do so. And then there's the seed savers, and there's the outreach, the zines with the media, the social media, translators, transportation needs, researchers, the advocates who are working kind of at the policy level and working with institutions, and other kinds of roles that are filled. And yeah, so having that volunteer coordinator, I'm just going to say that again because it's really critical, because often when you're in the heat of the moment and you're responding to all this need for seed, you get all these people who want to help, but then it's a matter of how do you actually work with them to plug it into something that's relevant. And everybody has their own unique skill set, and everybody has something to contribute, and so you're trying to figure out a lot of diverse ways to do that. A lot of people they don't like gardening, or they won't be physically able to do a lot of the gardening, but they may like to sit and package. We get a lot of people, elderly folks in the community, who just like to kind of sit and hang out and package seeds, and so that's something that is a great service, and it helps everybody out. So just be creative in what you're offering to the community and how they can be involved in. Once they start getting involved, then they may want to start doing more.
I know we have 5 minutes left, but just one thing, my little trademark that I love is make it replicable, make it easy for yourself. So when we do our work parties or our social media, I literally created here's a step-by-step. So when I wasn't able to do it, I was easily able to give it to someone else, and they were able to just follow the steps along. When that woman got pregnant and had a baby, we were able to pass it on to someone else. So it wasn't like having to reorient the whole thing. It's here's the piece, and it's easy. And as we adapt the system and modify stuff, we can add to that document. But it's really easy to plug some other person in.
And then the last two of you, just be brief, so we do have a few minutes. We have the luxury of going to dinner afterwards, so we can run a little bit over, but we want to be pretty close.
Okay, yeah, what Rebecca said, have a list of all your duties, so it's very clear to both you and your volunteers. I'm 64. I believe, looking ahead, I believe the untapped thing of volunteers is people who are retiring and have all this time and energy and passion that they want to pass on. But be careful that with your volunteers to have more than one. So somebody has a baby or somebody has a heart attack, you have other people to step in. But when my daughter first started the college, she was working it all out herself to get it set up, and she could have had some volunteers, but they wouldn't have been productive because she had to work her way through it. It wasn't until she actually had it set up that then she could make her best use of volunteers.
Actually, we're very fortunate here. We have at the main library anyway, we have a librarian, and most of the work does get done here at the main library. Actually, this is sort of the hub for all of our processing of seeds. And we do have one of my colleagues, she's also a fellow seed librarian and the book bag librarian and just an all-around dynamo. She's also the volunteer coordinator and does it really well. And so she has sort of devised this sort of intake system. And so people who just want to volunteer with the library in general can fill this out. And she does have on there then seed library. And some people go, oh, there's a seed library, so that's sort of one way. And then from there, she sort of assesses further what people's particular skills and interests are, and then sort of finds ways for them to be involved in those trainings. Another thing we do is just the repackings, and we kind of actually put ourselves in a highly visible place. So we advertise it, but then we also are available. We're out there, so passersby see what we're doing, stop in, help a little bit, sort of commune with us. And we have now got a lot of folks who take seeds home with them. And so, like Rebecca suggested, we have put together a list with sort of quantities, how much of something goes in a packet, roughly, and so that anybody can give that to somebody, and we have volunteers who take quantities of seeds home and just enjoy, it's meditative, and while they're listening to a book on tape or watching a movie or something, package seeds, drop them back off at their home branch, they make it back to us, and that has been actually really, right now, I took some folks up yesterday, and there's like a backlog. We had just tons of folks who love that, taking the seeds home and being involved in that sort of way, so.
It's a leap of faith, though, sending off your seeds to someone.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's all a leap of faith at this point. It's all a leap of faith.
Trusted volunteers. Okay, so we want to open it up to questions from the audience.
My question would be something that I did not think of either, is the idea of putting a maximum number of seed packets per time at the library. And I wondered how many of you do institute that in your projects, and just philosophically, or how it's worked for you.
What we do,
We don't have a limit on the number of varieties you can take, but we just say 2 to 3 seeds for every seed you intend to grow for this season, and for small seeds, a pinch. Like, you do not need a handful of amaranth.
We do 6 packets a month.
10 packets.
6 also, 6 a month.
Just take what you need, what you need.
Anybody else? Questions?
Yeah, I had a question for Jacob in particular, and a follow-up question for anybody else who wants to answer it. For the butterfly feed, is that something, I was just wondering, like, what was motivating people to do the butterfly feed? Is that something that you guys were, the awareness in the public was coming from something that you guys were doing, or just from being in Monarch Butterfly Zone? And then for the other seed library folks, what are your most requested seeds, and do you have people lined up that are, able to supply those most requested seeds for you?
Yeah, I think it's a general awareness that's raising around the monarch butterflies and their symbiosis with the milkweed. People don't know that monarchs lay their eggs exclusively on the milkweed plant, and they migrate across the continent from Canada all the way down to Mexico. It's quite a beautiful thing. If they don't have places to stop and lay their eggs, then they can't continue that. And so there's been a number of public awareness, and particularly in Canada, the David Suzuki Foundation, which is a major environmental group. They've been selling little seedlings of milkweed as a fundraiser and getting it out there to create pollinator corridors. But they run out of seedlings quite quickly, and then people can't afford to buy it. They don't have any left. And then they want to still plant milkweed, so they come to us and we supply them with the seeds.
Yeah, and I was talking with Gary about this this last couple of days, is really wanting to encourage seed libraries for us to be distributing milkweed, and with really like how do we create how do we create that as a movement within our communities, and document that, get that into the public schools, and like get students to be like citizen scientists, where they're looking and they're documenting like how are we seeing them. And I know, Gary, what's the name of the program?
Yeah, there's 3 groups that can help everyone right away. Xerces Society in Portland has a milkweed finder that I think is potted plants at nurseries all across the country, and Monarch Watch has seed finder for vice versa. But they list every seed company and nursery where you can get primary stock, and then Journey North has 20,000 schools involved in tracking the arrival of monarch butterflies on milkweeds at schools. So 20,000 schools in Canada, US, and Mexico. And then the kids have chat groups between different portions of the range, talking about the stresses on milkweeds and monarchs in their area. This has been going on for years, and the incredible thing is that now the monarch science over 2/3 of all papers published on monarch migration include children's observations of what's happening with milkweeds and monarchs. And 1/3 of all papers on monarchs now include citizen science of anything on monarchs. So it's probably the single most successful example we have that school children and retired people in laymen are having an incredible impact, not just on basic knowledge, but on conservation.
And one thing I want to just put out there as a little kind of seed, hopefully that germinates, is in my yard. Everyone talks about backyard gardeners on front side, whatever. But I also have a 3-foot strip on the front of my yard, which is specifically like a habitat zone. And my neighbor and I were talking about, he's a California native person. And we were talking about if everybody would donate whatever, earmark or whatever, the first 2 feet of their yard towards just habitat, we could create these amazing corridors where we could have like habitat for all these different species to kind of migrate, and have the food that they need.
There's a lot of varieties of milkweed that grow in Nebraska, and we grow 3 on the farm, and one is pleurisy root, which is really magical, orange butterfly milkweed. And then I also have seed here. I just wanted to mention that if anyone's interested, for Silky Schleppia, which is just kind of it's a more of a floral cut flower type of one that's bicolored, really beautiful. I don't have it with me right now, but I'll bring it tomorrow. And then as far as what other things people check out, the cataloging system is really helpful. And then when we know things that are being really checked out, I mark it, and then we have growers throw it out, or we just order more seed.
I think there's the what are our community growing up, but also thinking about what do we want to offer. And for me, I really look at it in terms of food security, that we should, I would like our communities to really be thinking about, let's grow a lot of squash, get people up to speed on how to use save squash properly, and a heck of a lot of beans. And I think if we have those going, then we're in good shape in terms of having some substantial nourishment for our communities.
I think that's a good note to end on.
We are finishing up now, so it's just before 5. You have